Welcome back. So the trade market this year has been slow. It's been quiet. And I think with the shutdown, with everything else that's going on right now, I think that's really kind of killed off the trade market. But it's going to come back. We're going to start seeing trades. And one of these 8 teams on the board likely will set the market. And you always hear about setting the market. And, what's the premium for draft picks? Well, it's the team selling those draft picks that decide. But for the teams that are selling off UFAs, pending UFAs, they can set the market. So we'll see which one of these teams decides to make a move first. Now, in order to qualify to be on this board, you had to be a minimum of 8 points out of the playoffs. To me, 8 points and further means you're very likely not going to make it. 6 points is borderline, hard to argue, and the Canucks are at 6 points back. So they're not on this board exactly, but they're not that far off. So we'll start off in the East with New Jersey. They're 10, 15, and 5 through 30 games. They're 8 points back of the Detroit Red Wings, who have that final wild card spot. They have 1 game in hand, but again, when you're 8 points back, that doesn't mean a lot. Their goals for per game, 2.7, which is 22nd overall in the NHL, so they're not scoring enough. And they're allowing 3.37 goals per game, which is 26th. So those two numbers together, that's not a winning formula. And over the last 10 games, it's gotten worse. They're 1-8-1 over their last 10 games. New Jersey in a disappointing situation. And of course, there may be some discussion about whether or not the coaching staff gets let out the door. But that's happened a lot with New Jersey. It feels like they're changing coaches a lot. So we'll see whether or not they do it again. VC, Subban and Gertson are UFAs of note. I didn't get all the UFAs on the board for everybody. But to me, VC's had a good resurrection of his career in New Jersey. Might have some interest there. Subban, if they eat some of that money, it's an expiring contract. Somebody's going to be interested in him at the deadline in all likelihood. And Gertson, if you want a little bit of sandpaper, it's not going to cost you a lot to get him. And he's been, decent for New Jersey when he's in the lineup. Now, for draft picks, what I've done is I've looked over through Cap Friendly which teams have extra draft picks in which round. Now, extra draft picks for New Jersey are in the 4th round where they have 3 of them. So you're not going to be able to get 4th rounders, even though this is supposed to be a deep draft. That's not a lot that gets you. You're not going to get something that's going to change this record dramatically, right? So the last playoffs for New Jersey were in 2018, and the last time they got out of the first round was 2012. It has been a long while since the New Jersey Devils have had both a successful regular and postseason. Of course, 2012 was a pretty successful postseason, so New Jersey fans have been waiting almost a full decade now since then to have another run. I think they've got the right goaltender for that with Blackwood. The rest of the team, it's questionable, right? So for New Jersey, they'd have to go on quite the winning streak. So would Buffalo Sabres, who are expected to be in this position, but they're tied with New Jersey at 10, 15, and 5. So, again, 8 points out, 1 game in hand. They're scoring 2.67 goals per game, which is 24th, just below New Jersey. Their goals against is also worse than New Jersey at 3.43 goals against per game. So they're 28th on that level. So they're close, 2.7 to 2.67, 3.37 to 3.43, and the records are the same. So they're not taking exactly the same route. For Buffalo, they're 2-5-3 in their last 10. Competitive, keeping it close, but still 8 points out of the playoffs. Their UFA list is huge. Eakin, Hinostroza, Hayden, Jankowski, Butcher, Haig, Miller. You've got Subban, so there's 2 Subans out of 2 teams so far, and Pesek. So there's a lot of interesting names there, and again, there are others I could have put up there for Buffalo because there's a lot of expiring contracts. I would think Eakin would attract some interest at the deadline. Hinostroza might. Hayden might, because there's teams that might need that sandpaper that Hayden would provide. And then it's a question of, do the Buffalo Sabres want to keep any of the blue liners that are currently on expiring contracts? And if the answer is no, they'll find a taker for these guys, right? So they have 3 first-round draft picks. There's an asterisk there because, of course, first-round draft picks are going to be protected draft picks. As in, if it's a top 5 pick, if it's a lottery pick, in some cases, if it's top 10, it's a protected pick. The last time Buffalo made the playoffs was 2011. I don't really need to tell Sabres fans this. They know this. The last time they got out of the first round was 2007. So we're going on 15 years since Buffalo got out of the first round. It's not a great time for Sabres and their fans, but it's been that case basically since 2011, the last time they made the playoffs. The surprise on the board is the Islanders. The biggest surprise to me. So, 26 games, 8-12-6 record. They are 11 points out of the playoffs. They do have 5 games in hand on Detroit. So if they win all 5 games that they have in hand on Detroit, they're only 1 point back. But they're not really a team that looks like they're ready to go on a winning streak. And I keep waiting for them to dig their way out of this, and they don't. So their goal scoring, 2.19 goals per game, which is 30th. They don't score. It's a very simple formula. You score goals, you probably win the games. Their goals against, 2.85 per game. That's actually 15th. Their goals against, their goaltending's been pretty good. Their record over their last 10 is 3-3-4. So they've been 500 over their last 10 games. But when you're that far out of the playoffs, 500 doesn't get it done. You can go 5-5 in every 10 games for the rest of the season. You're not getting anywhere near the playoffs. These holes you can dig your way into early in the season can be killers. So Clutterbuck is an unrestricted free agent. I would think they'd try to keep him around for at least another year. Parise, it hasn't worked out. Has not worked out with Parise at all. Chara, ups and downs with Chara as well, and Andy Green, who just had his 1,000th game. And so we'll see whether or not he's still an Islander at the deadline or if they move him. And the last time they made the playoffs, of course, was last year, where they got out of the first round. They made it to the Final Four, and now they're 11 points out of the playoffs. Then we get to Ottawa. Ottawa's not a huge surprise that they're not in the playoffs. A bit of a surprise they're 13 points back with a record of 9-17-2. So not great in 18 games. They've got 3 games in hand, but again, they're 13 points back, so the games in hand don't really matter. 2.79 goals per game, that's 21st. So they actually have the best attack of any of the teams that are on this board from the East. They're only below 1 team on this board overall. But their goals against, that's where they get hurt. 3.61 per game, which is 31st. So that is a problem. That is absolutely a problem. And if you look, you'll see 31st, 30th, there's 32nd, 29th, 28th, there's 26th. If your team allows a lot of goals, you're not going to be in the playoffs. That's just kind of a standard thing. And attack, 32nd, 31st, 30th, 29th are all on the board as well. So it's really just basic, simple maths, right? So for the Ottawa Senators, they have been 5-4-1 in their last 10. But again, if you're 5-4-1 in every 10 games from here, you're not getting anywhere near the playoffs either. Their UFA list is interesting. Tierney might attract some interest. Sanford would attract some interest based on his playoff pedigree. Paul might, if they decide to move him. Tyler Ennis, Holden, and Forsberg. Anton Forsberg, the goaltender, is a UFA this coming summer. I think he's been a good pickup. I think they're going to look to keep him, but we'll see. They have 2 second-round picks this coming year, and they have 3 third-round picks in 2022 as well. So Ottawa's still stockpiling picks. At the very least, they've still got them stockpiled in 2022. I would expect more draft picks in 2022 than that. The last time they made the playoffs was famously 2017. We're still waiting for them to get back. Montreal, rounding out the East, 31 games, 7-21-3. So they've played more games than the teams are trying to catch. They're 16 points out of the playoffs. They have no games in hand on Detroit. It is a nightmare. They are 31st in the NHL with 2.13 goals per game. They have 3.52 goals against per game, which is 29th. You can't win that way. Over their last 10, they're 2-7-1. So the teams in the East who are on this board, all of them going in the wrong direction. Ottawa's been a little bit better lately. They have 5 wins, the most of any team on the board, but it's not enough. Now, for Montreal, potential rentals at the deadline. Paquette could very well be of some interest as a fourth-line center. Sherratt's getting a lot of interest, although I wonder if that's dropped lately. He had a really good start to the season. It's dropped off, though, since that really good start to the season. Kulak, depth defenseman, and Matthew Perreault, who came over from Winnipeg, might attract some interest at the deadline. They have 3 third-round picks, 2 fourth-round picks, and 2 seventh-round picks as well. Of course, they made the playoffs last season, and they're looking to get back. I don't think they do, but they're looking to get back in there. Now we go to the West, and we look at the Chicago Blackhawks. 30 games, 11, 15, and 4 records. So they're 10 points back. They've played one more game than the team they're chasing, which is Edmonton. Yeah, it's tough. You've got Detroit that you're chasing in the East. You've got Edmonton you're chasing in the West. So even though the East has this perception that it's tougher, it may very well still be tougher. I think to get above the playoff line in the West, you've got to pass Edmonton. I think that's a more daunting task than passing Detroit in the East. But again, it's all, perceptions and opinions and all that. So for Chicago, their record is similar to that of the New Jersey Devils and the Buffalo Sabres. Over their season, goals for per game, 2.3, which is 29th. So their attack hasn't been good enough. Their goals against, 3.23 per game, which is 23rd. So again, both numbers are poor. Over their last 10, they're 4-4-2. So this is what I'm talking about, where you can be 4-4-2 if you're, say, Tampa. If you're Florida, you can be 4-4-2 in your last 10. You still look good. But if you're 4-4-2 and you're 10 points out of the playoffs, you have to go on a run. That's just not good enough. So their potential rentals, Carpenter, potentially. DeHaan and Gustafsson. DeHaan's an interesting one. Gustafsson, we'll see. And then you have both goaltenders who are unrestricted free agents this coming summer, Lankinen and Fleury. So do they move Fleury at the deadline? Do they consider moving Lankinen? Do they think, hey, maybe we'll find something else? Or what do they do with their goaltending? Or do they try to keep both of them? They have 3 third-round picks, 2 sixth-round picks. Currently do not have their own first-round pick, according to what I was reading. So Chicago, some issues. 2020 is the last time they made the playoffs. That, of course, was the year that they made it past the qualifying round. Qualifying round in 2020 really threw things off. There's some teams that should have longer actual droughts for the playoffs than what they have, because that definitely skewed things. But yeah, for Chicago, I do think that the playoffs are too far out of reach for them. Seattle, playoffs are definitely too far out of reach for Seattle. 30 games, 10, 17, and 3 record, 13 points behind a team that's played one less game in the Oilers. So it gets a little daunting for them too. 2.8 goals per game is 19th overall. So their scoring has been okay. Their goals against, 3.57, which is 30th. It has not been good enough. Over their last 10, they're 4-4-2. Again, Seattle's been decent lately, but they have to be better than decent if they're going to make up for this huge deficit they've built up. So their potential rentals, Yarncroke, Johansson. I think Johansson probably ends up being rented out at the deadline. Giordano's an interesting one, but I can't see it. And Blackwell. Giordano, I think they probably try to talk him into coming back for one more year kind of thing. They have 2 fourth-round picks. This was one of the criticisms thrown at Ron Francis. He didn't get enough draft picks when the expansion draft took place. Look for that to change around the trade deadline. I would think they'll pick up some picks. And last but not least on the board is Arizona, who are exactly where we thought they were. They are who we thought they were. 6-21-2. They're 22 points out of the playoffs. They are further out of the playoffs than they have points. They only have 14. They've played the same number of games as have the Edmonton Oilers. They have 1.93 goals per game, which is last in the National Hockey League. Far behind Montreal, who has 2.13. So Montreal is tremendous scoring compared to Arizona. Goals against, 3.69 per game, which is 32nd, which is just below the 3.61 per game being allowed by the Ottawa Senators. It is a pretty bad run that the Coyotes have going. They're 2-8 in their last 10, which is better than it could have been. As weird as it sounds, that 6-21-2 record is actually far better than what it looked like it was going to be, say 12, 13 games into the season. So their list of players is ridiculous. Kessel, you got to think Kessel's going to go at the deadline. Eriksson, Boyd, Roussel, Larson, Beagle. Keep in mind the 3 expensive contracts from the Canucks. They're all gone next summer. That's $12 million in cap space. O'Brien, I think, would get some attention at the deadline if he became available. Again, teams will be looking for a little bit of sandpaper, a little bit of toughness. Maybe Liam O'Brien is an interest to them. Strawman is a UFA the next summer as well. Lyubushkin, if they decide to move Lyubushkin, there'll be takers on him. I think he's been decent. Wedgwood, Dzingel, and Galchenyuk, who just signed there not long ago. These guys are all potential unrestricted free agents and thus could be moved at the deadline. No lack of first-round picks. They have as many as 3 right now. Again, there's the asterisk because there's the top 10 protected, lottery protected, and all that. 5 second-round picks. 5 second-round picks. So 8 picks in the first 2 rounds for Arizona this year. That's not bad. In a stacked draft, that's pretty excellent. Of course, the last time they made the playoffs was last year, 2020, when they knocked out Nashville unexpectedly, and then Colorado welcomed them to the first round with destruction and pain and misery, and reminded them that they're Arizona. But, it was a nice little run while they had it. So there you go. Which of these 8 teams would be most likely to have some kind of a turnaround? Which one of them would be most likely to have a turnaround, and can any of them have some kind of a turnaround? So I'm looking at this today. I'm also going to be looking at contenders during this break, and which contenders do we think are maybe in the best position to perhaps win a cup. So this is the easy part, which is which one gets Shane Wright. And so there's the other question. Is Arizona the team that needs Shane Wright the most? Is it Montreal? Could it be somebody else on the board, or somebody who's not even on the board? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.